Everything was supposed to go according to plan. Every detail had been rehearsed, every risk accounted for, and every person trusted the system more than themselves. But history has a way of changing direction in a single, silent moment. This story is not about machines breaking down. It's about people being tested, about pressure that exposes fear, courage, and unexpected leadership. What happened next was never written in any manual, yet it became a lesson that would be remembered forever. Stay with us as we uncover how one moment reshaped everything. Before we dive in, tell us in comments where in the world you're watching from. The operation began like hundreds before it, calm on the surface and disciplined in every movement. From the outside, everything looked perfectly controlled. Schedules were tight, systems synchronized, and personnel moved with practiced confidence. There was no room for error, and more importantly, no expectation of it. Everyone trusted the machines, the procedures, and the hierarchy that had been drilled into them for years. The environment itself demanded focus. The constant hum of equipment blended with sharp verbal commands and hand signals. Every sound had meaning. Every pause was intentional. This was a place where hesitation was dangerous and certainty was valued above all else. People didn't question the process, they followed it. Among them was her. She wasn't the center of attention. She wasn't surrounded by authority or giving loud instructions. She stood slightly apart, observing more than speaking, absorbing details others ignored. Her experience had taught her that disasters rarely announce themselves with noise. They arrive quietly, disguised as routine. As the operation continued, small signs appeared. Nothing alarming, nothing that would stop the process. A brief delay here. A signal repeated twice instead of once. The kind of things that usually resolve themselves. Most people dismiss them. After all, the system had never failed before. Then the silence came. Not the peaceful kind, but the wrong kind. The kind that feels heavy, unnatural. One system stopped responding. Then another. Screens froze. Indicators went blank. No alarm sounded. No warnings flashed. It was as if the operation had been paused by an invisible hand. People looked at each other, waiting for confirmation that this was temporary. Seconds passed, then more. Confusion began to creep in, slow but dangerous. Protocol demanded action, yet no one was certain which protocol applied. When systems fail quietly, certainty disappears first. Voices lowered, movement slowed, authority hesitated. She felt it before others did, the shift from control to vulnerability. This wasn't a technical delay. This was something deeper. And waiting for the system to correct itself was no longer an option. Around her, trained professionals stood frozen by uncertainty, conditioned to wait for instructions that weren't coming. The hierarchy that usually provided clarity now created paralysis. Everyone expected someone else to decide. That was the moment she understood something critical. If no one moved now, the situation would collapse on its own weight. Her heartbeat remained steady. Fear was there. It always is, but it didn't control her. She stepped forward, eyes sharp, mind already adjusting. This wasn't about rank or permission anymore. This was about responsibility. And responsibility, she knew, doesn't wait to be assigned. The longer the silence lasted, the heavier it became. What at first felt like a brief disruption now pressed against everyone's nerves. Time, usually measured in schedules and checkpoints, had lost its structure. Every second without resolution made the situation more dangerous, not because of what was happening, but because of what could happen next. She moved with purpose, breaking the invisible freeze that had taken hold. Her first instinct wasn't to panic or to dominate the room, but to understand. She checked what others had overlooked, asking direct questions, listening closely, connecting pieces that didn't yet form a clear picture. Systems didn't fail randomly. They failed in patterns. And patterns could be read. Around her, people began to notice. Not because she demanded attention, but because motion itself felt reassuring. In chaos, even small actions can restore order. She spoke calmly, assigning tasks that gave people something solid to focus on. One by one, hesitation loosened its grip. But pressure has a way of revealing weaknesses. A senior officer questioned her authority. Another insisted on waiting for official clearance. Protocols were quoted. Rules were repeated. Yet none of them offered solutions. Their words filled the air without moving the situation forward. The structure that once guaranteed safety now stood in the way of survival. She listened and then made a decision that would later divide opinions. Ignoring rank, she addressed the problem directly. Her voice was steady, not loud, but impossible to ignore. She explained what she was seeing, what was likely happening, and what needed to be done next. There was no arrogance in her tone, only clarity. She wasn't asking for permission. She was offering direction. Some resisted. Others followed instantly. The risk was real. If she was wrong, the consequences would be severe. Careers could end. Lives could be affected. But doing nothing was no longer a neutral choice. It was the most dangerous one. She accepted that responsibility fully, knowing there would be no excuses later. As actions began to unfold, tension sharpened. Systems were tested manually. Backups were activated. Communication channels were rerouted. Each step carried uncertainty. There were no guarantees, only judgment. Her awareness never narrowed. While focusing on the immediate problem, she watched the people around her. Fear in their eyes, trust slowly replacing doubt. Leadership, she understood, wasn't about having all the answers. It was about being willing to move when others couldn't. Minutes felt like hours. Then something shifted. A response. A signal. Not full recovery, but proof that the situation was still alive, still responsive. The room breathed again, cautiously. Hope didn't arrive as relief. It arrived as responsibility. Because now, failure was no longer abstract. It was personal. She didn't celebrate. She didn't slow down. This wasn't over. Not yet. As progress slowly returned, resistance grew stronger. Ironically, the closer they came to regaining control, the more dangerous the environment became. Success brought visibility, and visibility brought scrutiny. Questions started circulating, not about the problem, but about her. Who authorized this? Who approved that decision? Who would be held responsible if it failed? The room split into two energies, one driven by action, the other by fear of consequence. For some, the priority was no longer solving the crisis, but protecting themselves from blame. This was the true test, not of systems, but of character. She felt it immediately. Whispers, side conversations, glances that avoided her eyes. The same people who followed her minutes earlier now hesitated again, weighed down by politics and hierarchy. Pressure had shifted shape. It was no longer technical. It was personal. A direct challenge came from someone senior, someone respected. His voice was firm, measured, and public. He questioned her decisions, her authority, and her right to lead. The room went quiet again, not from failure, but from tension. She didn't react emotionally. She didn't defend herself with excuses. Instead, she did something unexpected. She took responsibility. Calmly, she explained her reasoning. Every decision, every risk, every assumption. She acknowledged uncertainty without hiding behind it. And then she said the words no one else was willing to say. If this fails, the responsibility is mine. That sentence changed everything. Leadership isn't proven by confidence alone. It's proven by accountability. In that moment, arguments lost their power. Fear lost its leverage. Because responsibility had finally found a home. The senior officer paused. Others looked down. The challenge didn't disappear, but softened. The crisis demanded unity, not ego. And slowly, cooperation returned. But the cost was real. She knew what she was risking. Reputation, career, future. Yet the alternative, stepping back to protect herself, felt worse. Some moments define who you are forever. This was one of them. The operation pushed forward again, fragile but alive. And she stayed at the center of it. Just when stability seemed within reach, the situation shifted again, violently this time. A secondary system failed, triggering consequences no one had anticipated. Warnings flashed. Readings spiked. What they had feared earlier now stood directly in front of them. This was the edge. There would be no recovery from a mistake here. Adrenaline surged through the room. Movements became sharper. Voices rose. Every person understood the stakes now. Not abstract, not theoretical. Real. Immediate. She felt the weight press harder than before. There was no protocol for this exact scenario. No checklist. No superior waiting with answers. Only fragmented information and seconds ticking away. This was where leadership stopped being taught and started being lived. She made rapid decisions, knowing each one closed doors behind it. There was no turning back. She adjusted priorities, reallocated people, abandoned plans that no longer served the moment. Flexibility became survival. Fear tried to creep in. Fear of being wrong. Fear of consequences. Fear of the unknown. But she didn't let it take control. Fear acknowledged, then placed aside. Around her, people followed without question now. Trust had replaced doubt completely. Not because she promised safety, but because she faced danger honestly. Then came the longest moment of the entire operation. A pause where nothing changed. No response. No signal. No confirmation. Just waiting. In that silence, she accepted something quietly. Failure was possible. Even likely. And leadership meant standing tall, even if it ended badly. Especially then. Finally, movement. A system stabilized. Then another. Numbers shifted back into acceptable ranges. The impossible began to happen. They weren't safe yet, but they were no longer falling. When it was finally over, no one spoke at first. Not because they were ordered to stay silent, but because words felt inadequate. The environment that had been filled with urgency now felt heavy with reflection. The operation was secured, damage controlled, crisis contained, but nothing was the same. People slowly removed equipment, wiped sweat from their faces, and avoided eye contact, not out of guilt, but respect. They understood what they had witnessed. Not heroics, not perfection, but leadership under pressure. She stood quietly, exhaustion finally reaching her. Only now did her hands shake slightly. Only now did the weight settle. She hadn't felt brave in the moment. She had felt necessary. Later, reviews would be written. Reports filed. Decisions questioned. Credit debated. That was inevitable. Systems love order, and crises disrupted. But one truth couldn't be erased. When everything stopped, she stepped forward. Not because she was told to. Not because it was safe. But because someone had to. That lesson would outlast the incident itself.